Hello, hello. Today I am building a rustic maritime wedding venue. This was inspired by the Sims 4 Sparked Challenge. I'm not expecting it to win anything. There are some really cool wedding venues out there, but I just figured I would go with the challenge anyway to try and challenge myself because wedding venues are really far out of my comfort zone. I don't really know like how to plan a wedding. I don't know really anything about that. I was my friend's maid of honor, but she got married at City Hall, so it was not a huge amount of planning that needed to be done for it. So I decided to build this wedding in the maritime setting of Brindleton Bay. I build in Brindleton Bay a lot. I love that world. It's my favorite world, I think. It's definitely my favorite world. I love Nova Scotia. I love the Maritimes. So this is my favorite place to build. It's my favorite place to live when I play in The Sims. I played around with the roof for the barn quite a bit. I wanted it to look like a little bit sunken in. So it would look like an older barn, but it ended up looking more like the roof of a pagoda. So I cut out a lot of me playing around with it because it took a long time for me to just end up being like, yep, and a normal roof, here we go. That little bit of raised terrain by the roof as well. A lot of barns that you see, like they do have bits of the barn that are built into the land. So I wanted to give a little nod to that. It is player tested though to make sure that Sims can walk up there because sometimes with the different terrain tools, you can end up with Sims who can't get up there if it's on the wrong angle. So it is player tested. You can get into the barn from there. I also played with having this little like raised area in the barn and a flattened area in the barn. I ended up not doing that because I wanted to have spandrels in to look like beams going across the barn, and with the foundation it would have looked really weird. Split leveling is not that great in The Sims 4. Like you can do it, but it's not great. Like I built my own house in The Sims, and there's ends up being a lot of dead space because I couldn't make the split leveling properly, so I had to have full staircases instead. So there's like all this empty space that doesn't exist in my house, but the staircases created it. I would really wish that we could get more accurate split leveling. But yeah, so here you can see like I tried to just make another room to put the spandrels in, but then you end up with the like foundation showing. So I played with that a bit. It didn't work, so I just got rid of the lower level and I put in walls. So and then obviously they get changed into spandrels, so they're not just walls through the whole build. I wanted it to look like beams going up to help support the barn. The whole look that I have for this barn, I wanted it to look like it had been slightly updated, but I want it to look very much just like a barn. I didn't want it to look hugely renovated. I just wanted it to look like a barn that had a few added details to it. Because I mean, some barns are fairly fancy, and I've seen like some barn weddings where the inside is completely redone. I did not want that for this. I wanted it to look like it was a barn. In terms of all the lighting, I put in just like the random, like the subtle saucer lights. They're not random, but I just put in the subtle saucer lights to get the place lit up. They don't make any sense with like the ceiling because I've deleted the ceiling, but I just put them in there so that I could see the space. I do get rid of them. I wanted there to be a lot of like this kind of like twinkly lights, lantern lighting, candlelight. Like I wanted all the lighting in the build to look very romantic, as opposed to, what's the word I'm looking for? Like fluorescent. I wanted it to look all very romantic. Plus, like if you were in an old barn, you wouldn't have like the voltage to light up the place with industrial or fluorescent lighting. You would have very limited space or very limited electrical inside. So like the twinkly lights and the lanterns and candlelight makes more sense for that anyway. So from a practical point of view and from a stylistic point of view, it just made way more sense. So that's what I did there. In this area, I'm just sectioning off the bathrooms, and I do come back to them later. Originally, I was going to have 2 bathrooms, and then eventually it becomes 2 really small ones and 1 very big one, but you'll see, I'll talk more about that when I get to it. Up here, I build the hay loft. I kept the loft up there. Obviously, there's no hay up there. It would have been cool if we had hay in this game, like if this was The Sims 3, and we had horses, I would have put hay up in the hayloft there, but obviously it's not. So, because I mean, it would have fit with the style. But anyway, I just put some crates, and I put a few, put some wine barrels up there as well, just to look like maybe the people who own this property keep stuff for the wedding stored up there. And I changed those windows out so they don't stay like that, because I wanted to have like, I'm sure there's a proper term for it, but I just don't know. But I wanted to have it be like when you're in a hayloft, there's like a big door that opens so that you can drop hay onto the ground below. I wanted it to have something that looks like that. But you'll see me play around with that in a bit. So for the lighting in this build, I wanted all the lights to have a rustic look, but I also obviously didn't want it to be dark where you couldn't see. So I do use a little bit of debug lighting in the bathrooms. I do play with the debug lighting a little bit in the main venue area, but I don't end up sticking with it. It's only in the bathrooms that I use the debug lighting, and it was just because it was so hard to make it look well lit there, but still match a rustic theme. When I put in like nice rustic looking lights, it was so dark. And like you'll see, some of the lights in this game, I don't even understand their purpose. Like, why do they exist? They let off no light whatsoever. It's completely ridiculous. I don't know who was like, yeah, this is fine, and put those into the game. These bathrooms I probably could have just cloned, but by the time that thought occurred to me, I was almost done building them anyway, so I just finished building them. But yeah, those lights there, like, they don't do anything. Why do they even exist? So I put some debug lighting behind them to look like they lit up there, and then put a couple of other lights in as well. And I mean, it does make sense that these rooms are a little bit darker. I wasn't looking for them to be like perfectly lit up, but I did want them to be enough that you could see what's going on. So those are just the two main like small bathrooms. Nothing fancy. This bathroom's a lot bigger. So this, again, most of my knowledge from like weddings and everything and wedding dresses is from watching TV. But from what I've heard on TV, sometimes with your wedding dress, you need help going to the bathroom because the dress is so big or hard, and like you need to fully take it off, and then you need help getting it back on. So I made one very big bathroom so that if the bride needed to pee, she had a big space where she could go in with her dress and have a friend help her out if she needed. I put a little ottoman there so the friend had a place to sit, or they could like they needed to put the dress down and didn't want to put it on the floor, they could put it on that ottoman there. So I thought it looked nice, but it's also for function as well. So this bathroom's a little bit bigger, a little bit nicer. It's like the main bathroom, and I got a couple of little details in it because apparently, like, and again, this is from me watching TV, but the brides are always like, I gotta pee, I'll be back in like 20 minutes because apparently it takes them so long. Which I think, I don't know, like I said, weddings aren't my thing, and I can't imagine picking a dress that was that difficult to get in and out of, but again, it's not my thing, so it's not my place to judge what kind of dress you'd wear. I think it's weird, but to each their own. I'm sure there's lots of things in my life that I do that other people would think are weird, so whatever. In this build, all of the plants kind of have a similar color scheme. So they're all kind of like white and orangey, and there's a little bit of pink in there as well. Because obviously at weddings, when you pick your flowers, all of the flowers in the building match. So I do try to go with flowers that match fairly well. The bathroom ones are like the least matchy, but I figured they'd be like part of the venue as opposed to the decor inside. So I didn't worry about those ones too much, but they still do have like all the orangey and pink and white hues. So all of the flowers that are in the building do match fairly well. And then I just put like a little sitting area out here, so that if you were waiting to go to the bathroom, you had a spot to wait. I put a mirror in there as well. So again, if you like just needed to touch up your lipstick or something and you didn't actually need to go into a stall, there is a mirror there to quickly do that. But that little sitting area is more just of waiting. And again, like the bench there, if the bride was peeing, her friend could pop out and sit on the bench and wait for her to need help getting back into her dress again. And maybe check on her makeup while she's there. So I put this rug in. I thought it matched well in the black. So this area, I was going to put a pet door sized up, and like it looks great until you go to place it, and then it looks terrible. So I didn't end up doing that. I got all excited. I was like, oh my God, this looks perfect. It's going to be great. And then I placed it and it didn't look good at all. So I had to change my thinking there. And I ended up just putting a door. So like you could open that and throw hay out. Obviously, like that's not how this building's being used now, but when it was built, that would have been the intention for it. So I've got some crates up there and some wine barrels. So there's a few things that maybe the people who own the venue are storing up there. Also at the bottom of the door there, you can see a little bit of white, like where the door just, it doesn't look well blended in at the bottom. So I wanted something to go underneath it. And I played with like a few different things because I didn't want there to be a huge trim. Like I wanted the paneling from the bottom of the barn to like run smoothly through with the top of the barn. So I played around with it a bit. I ended up finding a wall sculpture. I think it's from Dine Out. Yeah, it's from Dine Out, this one here. And I just sized it down and then put a few of them in line. So to try and just make it look like trim around the door. I think it's supposed to be a sign that you could put stuff on, but I don't use it that way. So playing with the lighting on the inside of the build was also a big challenge to work with. I had a lot of things that just did not work the way that I wanted them to with the lighting. It was very weird. Like the lighting from downstairs to into the roofing area doesn't match up well. Like because the spandrels technically, like even though obviously it's open space and it doesn't look like separate rooms, the way that the Sims 4 sees it is that each space in between the spandrels is a different room. So some of the lighting is weird at the ends. And so I played with the debug lighting. I tried to like hide these saucer lights in the spandrels so you wouldn't see them, but they'd just be there lighting it up. I didn't like the way that looked. I played with a few different things. I eventually gave up with this area and moved on and came back to it later. And I'm happy with the way it ended up turning out, but it was quite a bit of experimenting with it. I also thought about putting these lights in because I do put in like in that area, I end up putting in, like a wedding band area. So I was like, oh, well, these lights could have been put up to help illuminate the band, but then they stuck out at the end. And if you put something to cover, obviously I wouldn't have put that HVAC thing. That was just me experimenting, but if you put something to cover, then that shows through on the inside. And then if you move those in so that they're not poking through, the cameras like intersect all weirdly. So I abandoned that idea. And I moved on to like the head tables, and I originally was going to put the head tables here. I do move them. This space ends up being like where the bar and where the band area is. But for now I'm placing the head tables. So I put like the table of 2 for where the bride and groom would sit, and then the tables of 3 on either side for the wedding party. So this area, like this part is where I figure out like what all the seating is going to look like, and I figure out the centerpieces for all of the tables as well. I tried a few different chairs. I wanted something that wouldn't stick out and look like it didn't belong if it was in a barn, but I also wanted something that looked somewhat nice, so I thought that these chairs worked well for that. They weren't like ugly or anything, but they were also not too fancy. So I put the 3 candles at the head, at the like bride and groom's table, and then I put these little tea lights from Dine Out size down. I never play with Dine Out, but I do use quite a few of the decorative items. I don't know if that's necessarily worth what I paid for the game pack to just use some candles and flowers, because these flowers are from Dine Out as well. But hey, that's what I use. And like there have been a couple of times I've even thought about uninstalling Dine Out because I use it so little, and just having more space on my computer that way. But then I am like, I did pay for it. I might as well use these tea lights that came with it, because even though if I went back in time, I honestly don't know if I would pay for that game pack again. But I have it, so I might as well use it since I've already spent the money on it. So anyway, this area, putting in a spot for the band, piano, microphone, guitar, violin, so you could get like any style of band that you wanted. And then I put this stage lighting, so that ends up like that lighting lights up this area. And then over by the bar, I end up just putting a standing lamp behind the bar to light up the bar area a little bit more. I thought about putting, because there are a few like decorative bar items that have light come out of them, like the wall sculptures. So I thought about maybe putting one of those. I end up not doing it though. I don't even like place them on the wall. I just look through the catalog and look at them and I'm like, no, they're not the right style. I put this bar in. It's, again, I think it fits the style of the bar well, but it's also like nice. It looks like it would function well for big parties with the taps that you've got there. They're nice taps and everything. So I play around with a few things in this corner here. But I very, very quickly decide, nope. But while I was looking for the decorative items, I was like, oh yeah, there's this door from Get Famous, and it's meant to be like the movie studio doors. But it worked, like it could look like it was part of, like it was a barn door too, so a sliding barn door. So I put that in, and obviously like it's a decorative piece in The Sims anyway, so they wouldn't use it. But even if I was like imagining that that door really did open and that the Sims could use it, they would just, it would just be like permanently closed and everyone would use the side door. So now that I've finished that area, I moved the head tables over here and I put all of the seating at this area. So I was gonna originally do it the other way around, but then I was like, that doesn't make any sense that the guests would be like walking through the band and the bar to get to the bathrooms if they had to pee. So I have it so that like the guests are close to the bathroom, they can easily go if they need to. There's a little bit of space in between all the seating and the bar where like there could be a little bit of dancing. It's not a huge wedding, obviously. Like it's still a fairly, this would be a fairly small wedding. I mean, there's like six tables, and I have like 5 or 6 Sims at each table. I don't have, like there's different, a couple of tables that have different numbers. So like, you know, like 30 to 36 Sims, which is still a very small wedding. I mean, in The Sims, it's bigger than you'd actually be able to have in The Sims, but in real life, that would be a small wedding. So you don't need a whole lot of dancing space. And then the ceremony area is actually outside. If you're wondering at this point, where does the ceremony take place? It's not in here, it's outside. This is the reception area. So I just have a few more things to place outside before I build the ceremony area, which you'll see. So I just added some windows. I changed the door to brown. The door was white because originally I was going to do it as a red and white barn, but I very quickly changed my mind about that. So everything went to more wood tones. So out here, I'm building the ceremony area, and I wanted it to look like those like white event tents that you see. So I experiment with that a little bit, and this is another spot where like I actually use things from Dine Out, and yeah, so like these curtains from Dine Out, like Dine Out has a lot of really nice build mode items, but like if you're buying a pack for build mode items, it shouldn't be a game pack, like it should be a stuff pack, and the gameplay for Dine Out is just not great. But anyway, that's not what this video is about, so I won't get into it. But anyway, so I built this area. While I was building it, I was like, I have no idea if this is even going to work out. I might have to like scrap it all and do something else, but I did. It worked out. I thought it looked pretty good. And it's got the event tent on the outside, and then I just turn all the sides into spandrels, so it would look like the curtains could come down and fill out the whole thing if you wanted. I remove the floor. I do end up putting it back in though, because a lot of those tents, some of them are just on the grass, but a lot of them, they have like portable flooring that you could bring. So I decided to go with like the portable flooring idea, and then putting the roof on it, I actually was very worried about how the roof would look, and this was where I was like, that's probably where I'm going to realize that this isn't going to work and have to give up. But I thought it looked all right. It, like with the rounding and it going as flat as it goes, it looked like it could be a tent canopy. So then anyway, I picked the wedding arch, and with the wood that I wanted, the flowers were orange, so I went inside and I changed everything to orange. So when I originally placed those centerpieces, I was like, they might have to change because I wanted all the flowers to match, because obviously, again, at a wedding, you do pick your flowers and they do all go together. So once I picked out the wedding arch that I wanted, I did make all the flowers like oranges or pinks, and some of them are white as well too, but so the whole color scheme is like orangey pinks and whites, like very like sunset colors. So when I was building the venue, I looked at all of the different views from this lot, and I wanted the nicest view to be behind the bride and groom. Placed a little violin there for the ceremony music. But I wanted the nicest view to be behind the bride and groom, and I love that peninsula. Like, I just zoomed out, and you see that little peninsula there. I thought that was really nice and could make some cool photos. Plus, I liked how you can see, like, the buoy and some, like, the gate is very lighthouse looking. Like, it looks very nautical there. So since this is supposed to be, like, a maritime wedding, I wanted to make sure that you saw elements of that while the bride and groom were getting married. In editing, I cut out a lot of me placing these lights just because it took forever, because not only did I have to place a lot of them and move them up individually, but for every one that you place, because it's open, you have to place it on both sides since those lights only show up on one side, which makes sense because then when you have the walls down, you don't see them. But since the spandrels were there instead, I needed to make sure that you could see them. So it took a long time to place them all. But it worked out well, so it was worth it. I didn't do too much landscaping on this lot. Like, usually areas near barns are fairly cleared out. I just added a little bit of like a couple of trees, some overgrown grass just around the building and around the trees, and I do add a few flowers in as well. But usually, like, if you're near a barn, it's fairly cleared out. There isn't a lot of greenery. Like, there aren't really like a whole bunch of plants growing. So I put a bunch of flowers, and I was like, no, it's too much. So this area here, like, I put a little bench in, so I thought that it would be a nice place to sit. If this was TV, which is, again, where all of my wedding knowledge comes from, like, the main character would go out there at some point and have, like, a heart-to-heart with someone out on the bench about how they were feeling. Like, if this was, like, How I Met Your Mother, what comes to mind is, like, when Ted is telling Barney that he and Robin broke up at Lily and Marshall's wedding, or maybe Robin's telling Barney. Anyway, but they do it like out on a little quiet balcony. So I was like, this little bench would be that quiet area where two people could go from inside the ceremony and have a little conversation if they needed to. I added in some terrain paint just to make all the details look nice. I was also imagining too, like, if you know this property, you'll know you can see the lighthouse from it. And there's like it looks like a little house near the lighthouse. So in my imagination, I was imagining that, like, the people who own this property own this whole island and they live in that house. So that's where they live, and then they rent out the barn for wedding venues. You do see it in the screenshots. It's the last screenshot that you'll see, and I'll try and point it out if I don't run out of time. But it is there. While I was taking all of the screenshots, Katrina Caliente, because I went into live mode to take them so that I could get all the angles that I wanted. And Katrina Caliente was in, like, every single shot. So I'd move, like, she'd be in the way, and then I'd go in and I would, like, play in live mode and then move her. And then when I went to take another spot, she'd be there again. And I was like, get out of the way. So anyway, here's the shot of, like, the lighthouse in the back coming up in just a second. There it is.